Hello, mamas. Welcome to today's interview. I am so delighted to be joined by a mindfulness expert who has spent the last 25 years practicing mindfulness and bringing it to corporate teams, bringing it to her own family, bringing it to her own child, and is somebody who was really on the forefront of meditation and mindfulness. She as well has some certification from the Chopra Center. She's got a program that you can find on microdosing mindfulness. It is a absolutely fascinating topic. I love to know how we can integrate it with our children because it makes really, truly, it makes family life just a lot more enjoyable. So today I'm joined by Catherine Malli-Dawson, and I'm delighted to have you here.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. I am so excited to be here and to be talking about this with everyone and just sharing some of the ideas and tips and tricks that I've learned through trial and error throughout the years, and just really helping people understand what is mindfulness and not be afraid of it either, because oftentimes you can be a little like, oh, mindfulness, it's so woo-woo. It's actually not. It's really practical ideas, practical tips and tricks that we can incorporate into our daily life. So I like to say I take the woo-woo out of the mindfulness and make it real.
Yes, you do. And I've known you for long enough. I know that you're incredibly grounded and you're not woo-woo at all. And you have an amazing program called Microdosing Mindfulness. But really, I believe you coined the term microdosing mindfulness.
I did. Yes. Yeah, I did. And part of it is because what I found in working with individuals or groups is that when you start to think about purpose or mindfulness, people can get a little like, oh, what is that? And how do I do that? And they get a little overwhelmed and almost scared of it. And so by breaking it down into micro steps, tiny little changes over time, they have a huge impact, which is why I call it microdosing mindfulness.
Yeah. And before we jump in too deeply, I'm curious, what would you like mamas to know about your topic? Like, if you have to boil it down into one thing that's a benefit for mamas who want to include mindfulness in raising their kids and looking after themselves, what would you break that down to?
I would break it down to number one, take care of yourself first. Number one is absolutely looking out for yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself first, you cannot take care of anybody else in a positive way. You've got to have that energy. You've got to restore your own energy before you can give that energy to anybody else. So that is absolutely number one. And I'm going to slide in number two as well, because it kind of goes along with it.
Yeah.
And that is, try not to be everything for everyone else but yourself. It kind of goes along with the same thing of putting yourself first. But I know I fell into the trap of wanting to do and be everything for everyone else to the point where I forgot who I was and I didn't take care of myself, and my health suffered for it. So number one, take care of yourself first and try not to be everything for everyone else.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think we often think that if we spread ourselves, like if we do look after everyone else, that's what we should be doing and that's what's first. And so many of us get to the point of burnout before we realize, oh, wow, maybe this isn't what's best for everybody else if I can't function better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And it's a trap that we fall into, and society almost puts that on us. You know, we're expected to be the mother, the parent, the wife, the business partner, whatever that is. And we try to stand to the highest standards of all of those different roles. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And we have to recognize that we cannot be everything in every role for everyone.
yeah. We had last week I was in a conversation with someone and they said, and this is just stuck with me, it's solving isn't serving.
Yeah.
Supporting is serving. And like just that one distinction of it's okay to support a lot of people and love a lot of people around us, but we don't have to solve all the problems. We don't have to be everything for everybody.
That is so true. And oftentimes as a parent, as a mother, we want to help. We want to take that on. We want to, especially when it comes to our children, we want to help them through everything. We don't want them to suffer. We want them to be, you know, in perfect health and always have the best and do everything for them to our own detriment. Yeah. And that's what it comes down to.
Yes. Okay. So before I hit record on the camera today, we were talking about micro whys.
Yes.
Will you tell us what is a micro why and why does it matter? No pun intended.
Excellent. As part of my program with the microdosing mindfulness, I take people through understanding what their micro whys are, because oftentimes we want to think about what's our purpose in life. We want to have this big, what I call the cosmic purpose. But not everybody has that. Not everybody has that motivation or that drive, and they feel like, oh, what am I doing? But if we really break it down and understand what our micro whys are in our daily activities, and I use the example of brushing my teeth. What's my purpose for brushing my teeth? Is it because my parents told me to before I went to bed every night when I was a kid? Is it because my dentist tells me it's the best thing to do to keep my teeth healthy? Is it because I want my teeth white and clean and my fresh breath? Sure, all of those things are part of it, but the real why, the real reason why I brush my teeth a couple of times a day is because when I was a child, I can remember going into my parents' bathroom, and on the counter there was 2 cups, and both of them had their dentures in them. And I thought to myself, that's gross. I never want to do that. I never want to lose my teeth. So my micro why for brushing my teeth is really making sure that I have all my teeth in my head for the rest of my life. But it's really about breaking it down to what is that micro why? Doing the dishes. Why do we have to do the dishes? Is it because we want clean dishes? Is it because we don't want to see the stack of dishes in the sink? Is it because nobody else is doing them? Why do we do the dishes? It could be any number of those things. Is it because we want to know that we've got a clean plate on the table when we sit down to have our dinner? Why do we do our laundry? Why do we brush our children's hair? We want to make sure that it looks good. Those little micro whys in all of our daily activities make it so that we are more mindful of not only our actions, but our interactions with others and those around us and our environment.
I love that. And being more aware of our interactions or mindful of our interactions is often how we reduce friction, really, right? Because sometimes we tend to get like disconnected from our why and disconnected from being aware and mindful of what's going on around us. And I think that's a lot of times when the friction goes up and the stress levels go up and we start making decisions that aren't really best for everybody and can really kind of throw our life off course.
Yeah, that's what I found. And I mean, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. When you get busy with your life and you know, your schedule is all over the place and there's a pile of dishes in the sink and you come home and you're like, why haven't the dishes been done? You might think that to yourself or you might say it out loud. Either way, it doesn't matter because that stress goes up. But if you think about it and you think, okay, the dishes aren't done, maybe everybody else has been busy as well. I know that I like to have a clean sink. I don't like dishes piled in my sink. So for me, it's about making sure that the dishes are clean, put in the dishwasher, put in the cupboard, wherever, whatever that is, and knowing that it's okay if I have to do it or somebody else has to do it. It's all about why you want to do it. Why do you feel that need to have a clean sink or have clean dishes in your daily activities? It's that why, that purpose behind it that really makes the difference. Because if you just come in and you just see the dirty dishes and you don't think about, well, why are the dirty dishes there? You can get very angry very quickly because then you start thinking, well, somebody's shoes are over there. Why didn't somebody pick those shoes up? Or, oh, look at that jacket on the back of the sofa. Why didn't they hang their coat up? And it just escalates and spirals into this really ugly, angry situation. But if we take a step back, take a deep breath, reconnect with our why, then move into the activity, it makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. So when I think about micro whys, I also think about getting curious about what our kids' whys are for why they want to do something. And it's kind of it's a real, like almost what I hear you saying is once we're aware of it, then there's a two-way communication about it. So back to the dishes example, if you can communicate with your kids, hey, I really like a clean kitchen before we go to bed, because then tomorrow morning when it's time to get up and make lunches and do the coffee and do the morning routine, I can start fresh. I can start the day fresh with a clean kitchen. So can you come and help me clean the dishes? Is communicating your why to your kids and leaving the door open. And by demonstrating that you're communicating your why, they also start to learn how to communicate their whys back.
Exactly. Yeah, that is exactly right, Andrea. So by being more present and being more mindful yourself, you can register your emotion and help them regulate theirs as well. And so by inviting them into that conversation, inviting them into that process and understanding your why, it does help them understand their why. So for example, if they want to go out and play, but maybe they haven't cleaned their room first, and that was the criteria, you can talk to them and ask them, well, I would like you to have your room clean because when we go to bed at night, it's just nicer, it's more comfortable. It's, you have your bed, it's all clean, you don't have toys all over the place, whatever the situation is. You can explain that to them. Now they may invite that, or they may not. They may say, I like my toys all over the floor. And then you can invite that conversation and say, okay, well, why do you like your toys on the floor instead of in the boxes? Maybe they'll come back with, because then I can get to all my blocks easier. I can get to my cars easier. I can, so understanding why they like the toys on the floor as opposed to in the box makes a difference. And then maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay to leave the toys on the floor, and knowing that they are comfortable with it. Maybe you're not comfortable with it. Maybe you're the one that likes the toys organized and in a box, but it's the child's room. It's their space. We also have to learn to respect that and be mindful of their wishes and recognize that they have a voice in their space as well, and empowering them to speak about that and to share their reasons why they like a messy floor. And it just opens that conversation up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of opening up the little whys and just finding out where you can give them wins and autonomy, and where they can learn at their own age, like appropriateness, have their own independence. Because ultimately what we're doing is raising adults, not children.
Exactly.
Like often when people say, oh, I'm raising kids, I'm like, really what we're doing, hopefully, is raising competent adults. And they just are here as kids right now, or they're here as children right now. So if you were saying to someone who's kind of struggling to understand this concept, or they're like, hey, I'm not even sure why I want my kitchen clean anymore, or I'm like, they're pretty disconnected feeling, because I think that's a really, really normal place to be. Very many of us at some point, and you and I do it, cycled throughout the months and the days, right? Sometimes we're really connected, sometimes we're completely disconnected. So someone's in a disconnected space and they're not even sure what their whys are. What are some of the questions they could ask themselves, or practices they could do, or ways they could pay attention to begin to even notice what their micro whys are?
Yeah, so I actually have a worksheet that I take people through, and I ask multiple different questions. So for example, I would ask, what brings you joy? Right? Mm-hmm. What brings you joy? And you can apply that to any situation. So taking the kitchen as an example, if I'm looking at my kitchen and I think, what brings me joy about my kitchen? Well, for me, it's about having counters that are clean, having things put away, no dishes in the sink. Those are the things that bring me joy in my kitchen. Well, why is that? Because then I know where things are at. When I go to cook my meals, I know where I need to go to get the different utensils and appliances and things of that nature. I don't have to scrounge around in the different cupboards trying to find things. I know that I have my countertops are clean when I start, and so I can just get started. I don't have to clean it up before I get going. So it's things like that to really kind of break it down into the different levels, different layers, and understanding what it is about that particular situation that brings you joy. And then, okay, what about it right now is upsetting? What about it is upsetting to you right now? Is it because the countertops are dirty? Is it because the pots and pans aren't put away properly? Is it because your son or daughter came in, cooked their breakfast, and left everything a mess? Understanding why that is, what it is that's triggering you to have that reaction. And so really breaking down and understanding. So first of all, what brings you joy? And then what brings you frustration? And then how do you change that? What can you do to invite the change? So is it Is it a conversation with your husband, your children, whoever it is, your housemaid, whatever? Is it a conversation with them to help them understand what your needs are, what your requests are, and put that out for them so that they understand because if you just come in and just say, oh my gosh, this kitchen's a mess, I don't like this, you're angry, you're frustrated, it just, as I said before, it spirals and spirals, and then nobody's happy, everybody's angry, and we all feel upset about it. But if you look at it and you invite them into the conversation and you say, you know what, when I come in to make dinner, I'd really like to have the dishes put away. I'd really like to have, the counters clean, because then I can just get started. I don't have to clean the kitchen first. It takes me 20 minutes to clean the kitchen before I start dinner, which means dinner is now 40 minutes late. So if you put that into context for them, it helps them understand why it's important to you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. What's funny is that when you say, using the example of the kitchen and the dishes, and then you said, what about this right now is upsetting? Mm-hmm. When I thought about it, I kind of internally, as you were talking, went, oh, what is upsetting to me when my kitchen isn't clean? And what's funny is that a lot of it is, I fear that my mom and my grandma wouldn't be happy if my house wasn't tidy. Like, I came from a family that was pretty attached to like tidiness in general. Now, in hindsight, there was a lot of kids in my family. My grandma had a lot of kids. My mom had a lot of kids. It makes sense to me why you would need order, because I like order also. But I think it's important that we say, what about this right now is upsetting, which might be the very practical example of, well, that means I'm going to need longer to make dinner tomorrow night, which is totally reasonable. And then go a little deeper and go, why is that? Like, what else is upsetting to me about it? Brings a sense of mindfulness that, oh, it's because I fear that I might have judgment from my family, or my partner's not okay with that, or that my kids will grow up and be like sloppy children if they don't have tidy values or whatever. So I think it's important to keep in mind that your why often has layers to it, right? And like Absolutely. What I said, so many layers.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like the example with my, brushing my teeth. It's not about having clean teeth. It's about making sure that my teeth are still in my mouth, and so that I don't have dentures in the cup on my counter when I'm older. Which goes back to my parents. So absolutely, there are multiple layers, and just peeling it back. It's like that onion idea, peel back the onion. What's the next layer? What's that next layer? And understanding it down to that core, really understanding that core why.
Mm-hmm. And I think that comes in micro uncoverings as well, right? Once you uncover some of the surface whys, then the next time you ask the question, like, if you go walk into a kitchen 6 days and it's dirty 5 out of 6 days, and you ask those same questions, by day 6, you've understood other reasons why, not the same ones that you did just on day 1.
Exactly. Yeah. And I look at it too. Oftentimes we have external whys, internal whys, and then our core why. And so I use the example of exercise. If we have an external why for exercise, it's typically, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to look good. I want people to like how I look. So it's all that external aspect. And then there's the internal whys. I want to feel good about how I look. I want to feel good about how I fit in my clothes. I want to feel that I am strong, I have strength. And so there's those internal whys. And then there's the core whys. And the core whys for me are, for example, using the example of exercise, my core whys are, I want to know that I'm strong enough to take care of myself, that I'm healthy enough that I don't have to go to the doctor, I'm not on any medication, and that as I age, I will maintain my independence so that I'm strong and independent and capable of taking care of myself, and that my health is maintained as I age. And so that's why I exercise. That's why I eat healthy. So that's that external, internal, and then core whys. And so those are the multiple layers that you were just referring to.
Mm-hmm. I like that simple framework too: external, internal, and core.
Yeah.
All right. Shifting gears a little bit. I'm curious, what's one thing you learned from your mom or your grandma or another female figure in your life?
Yeah, so I would have to say from my mother, she was 5'4" and I'm 6'1", And I was always taller than any kid in my class, including the boys, up until probably senior year. And I can remember her telling me, "You are tall and beautiful. Stand up straight and be proud of who you are. Don't let anybody," because I would see these other tall girls, and they're always hunched over and trying to make themselves shorter, and she would always tell me, "No, you stand up straight. You be proud of who you are. Don't be afraid to shine your light." She didn't actually say shine your light, but that's basically what she was telling me. Don't be afraid to shine my light. And I love that from her.
That's such a good one to leave our kids with too. What's one time where you messed up as a parent and you thought it was like, complete mess up, and then now looking back, it's turned out okay?
Yeah, this is a tough one because the situation is with my son, and he was in his late teens, and he was at ASU at university, and I was taking him back after, I think it was Christmas break, and I knew he had been in a bit of a dark place. And I tried to reach him over the holidays, talking to him, communicating with him, trying to draw him out. And he was so resistant, and he just wasn't there. He just wasn't willing to open up. And taking him back to ASU, taking him back to his dormitory, I had this feeling that I seriously didn't know if I would ever see him again. And that was the hardest thing for me as a parent, to let him work through that process and allow him to be ready to reach out. Thankfully, he did. Thankfully, he worked through it, and he came to me a couple weeks later and he said, "I need some help. I really feel like I need some help." And I was so thankful. But I tell you what, that was the hardest thing for me to do. And I thought for sure, why am I not going down there, sweeping him up and taking him somewhere and taking care of him? But I also knew that was the wrong thing to do. I had to follow my intuition, and I had to allow him to work through some of it himself and be ready to ask for help. He had to be ready for it. If I had just swooped in and taken him and put him into a program, I don't think it would have worked out well for anybody. And by allowing him to make that decision himself, he was able to come to that realization and come to me ready to make that change. But it was hard. Boy, was it hard. And I thought for sure I had messed up big time on that one. But thankfully I did not. And he is still here, and I love him to bits.
Yeah. And then you obviously did something right, because he did come to you and say, "I need help," which means he thought you were a safe enough place to get him the help that he needed.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting because when he went to university, I can remember him saying to me, he's like, "I don't understand. A lot of my friends, they don't actually like their parents. They talk really bad about their parents." He's like, "I don't understand that." And so we talked about that. I mean, because that's not how he was brought up. And he and I have always had a very close relationship, which is, I think, why it was really hard for me, too, to let him work through it himself, because he had always been very open for me and with me. But for this time, he was not. And I think some of that influence of his friends and things of that nature probably played into that. But fortunately, he did open up and come to me. So, but yeah, he definitely recognized that we have a very different relationship than a lot of his friends.
Interesting. And who do you admire as a parent?
I would have to say my sister. My sister is 10 years older than me, and she pretty much raised me. And she was your classic hippie mother. She was a child of the 60s. So when she was raising her kids, and she was doing all of the gluten-free before gluten was a thing, wheat-free diet, and trying to make sure they got all the healthy nutrition and things of that nature, and, trying to be very conscientious about how she was raising them, and, how she spoke to them, and things like that. And so me, being 10 years younger than her, watching her raise her kids really had a big influence on me as I became a parent and became an adult. And she's now living with her son, and they've got a wonderful relationship, and him and his wife and kids. So it's really wonderful. So I would have to say she is my hero.
Does she know that?
I don't know. I don't know. To be honest,
recording and send it to her. You just lit right up when you said that.
She would love that. Actually, she would love that.
What's one thing that your son has taught you?
Oh, he has taught me so many things. I would say he has taught me that while the little things are important, it's okay as well not to be so controlling. And I say that because I go back to this time when he was, oh gosh, he must have been 4, maybe 3 or 4. And I was taking him in for a haircut. And he used to have, I always had this like little, what I would call a mushroom haircut. He was blonde, straight blonde hair, little bubble mushroom hair. I loved it. It looked like little Lord Fauntleroy, if you know who that is. And he was adorable, little cherub cheeks, and taking him in to get his haircut. And he sat there, and the hairdresser says, "Oh, well, what would you like to do?" And she's talking to him in the chair. And I started to say something. He's like, "I want it all cut off. Can you just buzz it off?" And I'm like, "Oh, what? What do you mean? No." And he turns around and he looks at me in this very adult way. And he says, "Mom, it's only hair. It'll grow back." I thought, wow, where did you come from? And he has just, it's little things like that throughout our lives that he's just reminded me the reality of things, the realness of things, and just, it's okay. It's okay because it's going to be all right. It'll grow back. So
yeah, they have such a wisdom. Like they're so, that's why I ask moms that question, is because I like to hear the wisdom that comes from them, because somehow we make it more complicated, I think, as adults.
Absolutely.
I had the same thing happen with my son, where he had long red, like wavy Beach Boy hair, and I absolutely loved it. And the moment I gave him authority to decide what he wanted, he was about the same, maybe 4, 5. He was a bit older, like 6 or 7. Anyway, he chopped it all off too. That was his thing. And I was like, oh no.
Right?
Like your hair. But what's funny is now as a teenager, he's got his long, flowy, beachy hair back, and he likes it. Like he rocks it. He knows it's his thing.
Yeah. It's so cute. I love it. It's nice to see them grow into who they want to be and who they are, and own that. I just love that. That's my joy as a parent, to see my son grow into the man that he is. And I just love that.
You know, that mine are a little bit younger than yours, but where I'm at right now, I am so grateful I gave them the freedom to be the person they wanted to be, because the one I had them being is not nearly as awesome as the one they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I look at them sometimes. I was on the ski hill with them yesterday, and I didn't realize my son had like stopped in the trees behind me. So I was like struggling down the hill, and this really wicked snowboarder comes flying past me, and I thought, oh man, that dude totally knows what he's doing. And then I did a double take, realizing it was my son. Oh. Because I thought he was already down the hill, so I just didn't, it was just in my blind spot that it would be my child. And I thought, whoa, like they're so much cooler and more capable than I would have ever imagined they could be. So
absolutely.
Better to let them be their own person.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's a bit like my son now. He's 29. He's living with us through this whole pandemic. He had to move in with us, which is fantastic. I'm loving it. I don't know if he is yet, but it's been a while, so he's got to get over it. But he has stepped up. And as you know, I broke my shoulder a couple of weeks back, so I can't cook. Mm-hmm. And I'm usually the one that cooks all the meals. So he and my husband have stepped up to cook. I tell you what, I never want to cook again. Such a good cook. I'm like, I said, at least you got something from me.
So Catherine's going to be like, shoulder still broken 18 months later.
I'm sorry, I'm still going through therapy. I can't quite pick that pan up.
My hands don't work anymore.
Yes. But it's been so amazing. And he's loving it, absolutely loving it. He's looking up the recipes and he knows that I'm in Wild Fit Deep Spring. So he's checking, oh, can you have this? Can you have, no, okay, well, I'll adjust the recipe this way. I'm like, awesome. It's fantastic. I feel so cared for. And I'm so proud of the fact that he is diving in and taking care of it. I love it.
So wonderful. What's your number one takeaway for mamas about whether it's like just parenting advice or about micro-wise or mindfulness? What do you wish you could tell every mom? That one thing?
Oh, I would say I go back to the first thing. Just remember to take care of yourself first. And the other thing is allowing others to do for you what you would happily do for them. Because as parents, as mothers, as wives, going back to part of our conversation, we always want to do everything for everyone else. And we never allow others to do for ourselves. And that's one thing this shoulder situation has taught me is if somebody else, if it were my husband or my son who had this situation, I'd be doing everything for him. And I've had to step back and allow them to do for me what I would happily do for them. And that is such a lesson that I am learning that I want to share with everyone else. Just to remember that they want to help you. They want to take care of you. Allow them that honor.
Thank you so much. That's so true. And thank you for joining us. It was wonderful having you here. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again and maybe even do a workshop on micro-wise so we can dig in a little bit deeper. Thank you very, very much for being here.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. It has been a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rich Christensen, and through the years of entrepreneurship and growing crazy businesses, I lost a view of what was really important. Through a series of really tender experiences, my mentor taught me you can replace anything in this world, but you cannot replace your family. So I made a dramatic pivot and started embedding deeply in my family some of the same principles that applied to business. My wife and I began very deliberately parenting. We looked for models, how not to mess our children up. There were really no good models to teach values, to entrench family unity, and to make sure that the values passed on in legacy to my children, and more importantly, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So like every great entrepreneur, I secretly created my own models. I was very hesitant to talk about it, but a few of my closest friends saw the impact that this was having on my children. I decided to take the processes that I used and create an online course so others could also work with their families to create tighter bonds, build confidence and self-esteem, while constructing a gorgeous legacy that they could live on past our lifetime. With this 5-part digital training series, you'll find the single most important lessons of thought leadership that I've ever created. There's 5 critical parts to this series, each with its very unique function. The first is symbols, creating unifying symbols that we all can touch to. Second is the doctrine, the guiding principles that we can tag and understand what the rules are. The third is the traditions or the rituals, where we actually formalize and we unite and show that we're unified with the values. The fourth, my favorite, the defining life events. The final section of this is the structure. What do the really wealthy families do to preserve their wealth and to pass on in the form of family banking? To pass on how you appropriately set up the will and how you embed your family constitution so that these values permeate and pass on. I can tell you firsthand that taking these steps to create a beautiful life for my family is the most important work that I've ever done and also the most rewarding. I would invite you to learn some of these principles, unify your family, bond them, and take some of the guesswork out of this. And I'm going to provide you the framework to make that happen with this 30 years of life experiences. So join me, get your membership to build family legacies today.